Power to the truth. This is Margo. This is Sunday, April the 14th, 2019, 6:22 p.m. Pacific Time, United States of America. So we have a new report from Nostradoomus, aka Dave Alcock from the UK. He's been tracking the methane data from NOAA since March 1st, and he gave us his weekly update today. He left it as a comment under my video from yesterday. You're welcome to go look at that. I've just copied the comment, and so we're going to go through that first, and then I'll show you the spreadsheet, and then we're going to look at CAMS, the data. They have new data up from yesterday even, and so we're going to look at that. Then I've got the Navy sea ice GIF to look at, and then we're going to look at earthquakes. I was going to do more of a climate roundup, but I'm going to try and keep this a little shorter because I'm getting a late start, and I worked all day on my website and got some new things to show you guys over there in the next few days. So we're looking at Nostradoomus, his methane report. He says, now to my methane report, latest data as of April 13th, which was yesterday. And he's looking at the NOAA data from METOP1 satellite AM, METOP1 PM, METOP2 AM, METOP2 PM. So it's two satellites that gives two separate sets of data every day, and these are the millibars, or the height in the atmosphere for the readings. So he's taking them for 931, 706, 477, and 300. So just looking at it that far, let's go ahead and look at the spreadsheet. Now here's my spreadsheet that I've made, and here's our satellite data. Here it is from today. I plugged in all the data that he just listed over there, and here are our millibars on the side. And for those of you who are not familiar with millibars, it's the same as sea level pressure. It's the same as HPA or hectopascal. And 931 millibars is equal to about 1,000 feet, or pretty close to surface level, between the surface and 1,000 feet up in the atmosphere, or 304 meters. 706 millibars is about 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere, or it's the light, anyway, that's where the reading is, 10,000 feet up, or 3,048 millibars up. 477 millibars is about 20,000 feet up, or 6,096 meters, and 300 millibars is about 30,000 feet high, or 9,144 meters. So you see, when we get lower in the millibars, it's higher up in the atmosphere because it's less sea level pressure. So what the data is showing us is that it's going down, and we do want, typically methane does go down in the springtime and then starts coming back up overall in the summer and fall time. And if you saw Nostradoomus's video from a couple of days ago, he talked about that and showed the chart, and we're seeing that overall it's going down since last week. On the I'm tracking specifically the 477 millibars since March 1st, and but since last week at 477, which is pretty close to 500 HPA, it's gone down 4 parts per billion on MET-OP1. On MET-OP2, it's gone down 2 parts per billion. This is in the last week. I mean, MET-OP1 AM has gone down 4 parts per billion. MET-OP1 PM, it's gone down 2 parts per billion. On MET-OP2 AM, it stayed the same. And MET-OP2 PM, it went down 3 parts per billion. So, it's gone down at the 477 millibar level 2.25 parts per billion this last week. And the difference since the first reading, which was March the 1st when we started this project, it's averaged out that it's gone up 7 parts per billion, but that was less than last week since it's gone down. So there's the spreadsheet, and now let's look at Dave's analysis. Assessment: only one measurement, MET-OP2 PM at 931 millibar, is showing an increase in concentration at 2 parts per billion. One is showing amounts holding steady, whilst the rest are showing a decrease of up to 6 parts per billion. Once again, the two satellites show conflicting data. Taking the averages, MET-OP1 AM and PM combined shows a decrease of 3.25 parts per billion, whilst the same employed method investigating MET-OP2 AM PM shows a drop of just 1.125 parts per billion. Overall, the mean drop coming in at 2.188 parts per billion. So that's very close to the 477 reading that I came up with too. So that's overall. And his comment continues, "Now I couldn't leave it there. I'm just too inquisitive, LOL. I want to know why, assuming the data they are feeding us is correct, it is dropping when it is evident releases are still ongoing. From CAMs, for instance, I wanted to know how much methane would decrease naturally over the period of 1 week, knowing it has a half-life of 8.6 years, after usually being broken down by hydroxyl radicals in the atmosphere. This is complicated, but the wiki is very informative," and he leaves a link to the wiki on hydroxyl radical. And then he says, "So after a quick search on Google, I found this handy half-life calculator." There's that. "Using this, I worked out that based on current levels, methane should be dropping by 2.7 parts per billion per week." But we see it's not doing that. "I think they're spraying chemicals into the atmosphere. Hope you find this interesting and helpful. Much love, Dave." And then I say, "Thanks, Dave. I'll get this ready for my report later today." So I'm assuming by that last sentence, I think they're spraying chemicals into the atmosphere, meaning that's keeping the release kind of in check, or kind of at bay, or not going up, not going down too much, because this was the first week that we saw a decrease, and a significant decrease since March the 1st. So they're absolutely spraying, and we can see that. And I've talked about this. I don't talk about it very much but we've talked about the spraying. They are spraying all kinds of stuff in the atmosphere, and I don't want to get into a big discussion about that, but it's intermixing with all the greenhouse gases and everything and making an awful toxic soup, and it's just the way it is. So thank you, Dave, for that report. So he overall said that was decreasing. It decreased this week 2.188 parts per billion, and my spreadsheet on the 477 level was a decrease of 2.25 parts per billion. So that's pretty close. That's pretty close. So I'm going to stick with 477. I'm not going to worry about all the other levels, but it's good that he's tracking it for us. So we're going to leave that for a second, and now we're going to look at methane over on CAMS. They have been putting up new methane data. We have data for the last 4 days here. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I've been doing detailed reports every time I see the data, just little short reports, and putting them up on my Subscribe Star page for my members. So if you'd like to see the latest methane, and it's just a short detailed report, you can just join for $5 a month and support my work, and you'll get all the latest. And I do other stuff over there too that I'm not able to do on a public platform. But I do a lot of public posts too. So we've got the Arctic view pulled up, surface level. So this is for Saturday, yesterday. So we've got data for yesterday, and then it goes into the forecast period starting today through Wednesday. And their forecasts are pretty accurate. So this is where it left off on Friday. We're seeing the Arctic is pretty quiet. We're not seeing huge releases. We're not seeing a blowout. And so if someone shows you a picture of 500 HPA of the Arctic with a bunch of red up here, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. I mean, I've seen it worse. So, but we're not into summer yet. So here we go. I've got the movie loaded up. It's a little bit jerky the first time. We're still seeing large releases here in the Kara Sea, and this is ongoing. It's not stopping. This is to the east of Novaya Zemlya, and then it moves on up. We're seeing minor releases over here in the Chukchi Sea, off the coast of Siberia, and here coming up a little bit further towards the North Pole. But nothing huge and dramatic going on in the Arctic. Svalbard, there's no release on Svalbard. Iceland looks pretty good. Greenland is looking good. Remember, we were seeing those long arms of methane releasing across Siberia and spreading out about a month or so ago. We're not seeing that now. And so things have shifted and seem to have just calmed down, probably because of the weather and the where the cold air is located. But we are still seeing releases, high releases in China, high releases in parts of United States, and so on and so forth. And so when this hits the end, I'm going to pause it. I also have, oh, before we go on, someone, I'm not going to say who, shared this view on Facebook today and started flipping a bunch of people out without explaining that this was from CAMS at 500 HPA and that it does gather, methane does gather in the Arctic where the cold air is. And he left some comments that were really just scaring a whole bunch of people, and anyway, I've seen it worse. I've definitely seen it worse. And if we go to global view on 500 HPA, it looks like this as of yesterday. So we are seeing higher levels in the Arctic, and then coming up from China, and areas where we have high releases, and then it starts dispersing as it goes through the layers. So this is about equivalent to the 477 millibar reading, the average. So there's that. And now I have global level pulled up for, or global area pulled up for surface level, and I've got the movie loaded up, and it's for today, for yesterday, and then going into the forecast period so that you can see what methane is doing in your neighborhood. So I think it's going to be ramping up. We've got some high releases over here in the European countries, and then coming across England and Ireland into the forecast period. See, right there at the end of the forecast period, it really moves on out. High releases in the interior of South America. We always see it high over here in China and Asia, northern part of India. Although it doesn't look as bad as it has, so overall it has gone down. We can see the difference today, and it's less overall in the United States from the way it looks, just depending on the day. But like in the forecast period, it does plume back up because of the rains that we're getting, and it just moves around. So we're gonna stop that now. We're gonna close. Wait, I don't want to close that. Just gonna leave that. And now I'm gonna show you, this is the Navy picture of the Arctic sea ice. This is the thickness from today, April the 14th. This is their model, and we're showing, I'm going to blow it up a little so that you can see a little bit more what's going on. We can see here, okay, the purple is the thinnest, and the light purple. Light purple is the thinnest, and then as it goes into the dark blue, it gets into about 1 to 1.25 meters thick. Into the aqua, it's getting into about 2 meters thick. And then when you get into the reds and the yellows, it's getting on up into 4 and 5 meters thick. So not much thick ice at all. It's just right down here in the northern part of Canada and a little bit at the northern part of Greenland. So the thick ice never really developed like it has in, like a decade ago. And we've seen that in the last few years as we look back through the sea ice. And I've only been doing these reports. I started in April last year with doing methane reports. April 28th was my first CAMS methane report. So I'm coming up on an anniversary, and then I was tracking sea ice last summer, so I'm pretty new at doing all this. But anyway, we can see Novaya Zemlya doesn't have ice around a lot of it. Then it's very thin over here in the Kara Sea. Right over here is where that huge methane release keeps coming. It's very thin around the coastline of Siberia all the way around to about here, and then it's a little bit thicker over here in the Bering Strait. It's pretty much melted, and around the coast of Alaska it's pretty much melted, and then it's very thin around Greenland. We can see that, and melted around the edges. It's melting in the Baffin Bay and melting in the Hudson Bay. And so it's going to be melting quickly, and then it's really thin over here too by this little island. So I'll show you that this is the 30-day animated GIF from the Navy that goes back 3 weeks and then goes a week forward into the forecast period. So it ends on April 20th. So that's how they're anticipating it to go for the next week or so. We can see in the last 3 weeks it thickened up a little here. It did thicken up, but it's really diminishing around the edges a whole lot. So there's that, and I thought I'd do more of a climate roundup in the next couple of days, but I'm really tired, and I just don't have it in me to do any more of a climate roundup today. So now let's move on over to earthquakes, because this is the pulse of Mother Earth that I want to keep track of on a daily basis. We're looking at USGS for all magnitudes for the last 24 hours here. They're showing 248 worldwide. Of those, 51 were 2.5 magnitude and higher, which is very high. A high number, especially for a weekend when the earthquake makers are not at work. We're going to start with the oldest one about to come off the map. This 5.2 near Margo, Japan. So let's just go ahead and zoom on in at this cluster in the ocean on the red line. And in the last 24 hours there have been 6 here. Sizable earthquakes. 5.2, then a 4.8, 4.8, 4.7, 4.9, and 4.7. This one came in at 1:45 this morning, Pacific time. And all these times I'm telling you are in Pacific time, which is my time zone. Because it's easier for me to think like that for my reports. Now, let's see what else is coming off the map. Indonesia. Okay, so let's go on down here to what's going on in Indonesia. Here's this 4.2 on land near Napongi, Indonesia. This came in last night at 7:18 p.m. 129 kilometers deep. Right over here was where that big one was yesterday, 6.8. And there was one left over, a 4.6 near Luwuk at 10:17 this morning. Then over here in the Andaman Sea, we saw a cluster over here yesterday. Then one more, a 4.7. The reporting station is Mohi in India. This happened at 1:12 this morning. Let's look at the ones on land over here now. Here's one on the Tibetan Plateau of 4.6 near Pubu, India at 11:31 this morning. And a 4.0 near Depayal, Nepal at 3:42 this afternoon. And then a 4.0 near Yining, Xi'an, China at 4:20 this morning. And a 4.3 near Bojnurd, Iran at 12:59 this afternoon. So we're seeing activity picking up over here on land. Now let's move on around to Japan up here. This 5.0 is off the coast of Hokkaido near Kushiro, Japan. This happened at 1:28 this afternoon, 45 kilometers deep. And then this one is part of Russia reporting at 4.5 near Kurilsk, Russia at 2:23 this afternoon. That was in the ocean. So when we see all these in the ocean, they're probably not causing any damage, you know, other than tsunamis, if they're close enough to land and if they're shallow enough. But we don't see any tsunami waves on those, so now coming on across the Pacific, let's start down here in the South Atlantic. 4.5 near Bristol Island, South Sandwich Islands. This came in at 10:29 this morning. Coming on up in South America, 4.4 near Los Andes, Chile at 5:07 this morning, 103 kilometers deep. And a 4.4 near San Antonio de los Cobres, Argentina at 3:35 this morning, 228 kilometers deep, so that's a little deeper. Then we've had quite a few down here in Central America. 4.4 near San Francisco, Menendez, El Salvador. This looks like, okay, it was right on the coast at 6:32 8:32 last night, 101 kilometers deep. Then here's one off the coast, 4.5 near Puerto Madero, Mexico, at 7:53 last night. Then a large one on land of 5.0 near Jesus Carranza, Mexico, at 9:48 this morning, 100 kilometers deep. Now Puebla is up here, and Popocatépetl is around this area. I remember we saw the band of volcanoes that come across here. So is this connected to that volcanic activity? It could be. Why not? I mean, magma is included, is involved in volcanoes and earthquakes. As the magma moves, it causes the tectonic plates to move too. So I think that's all of the international earthquakes. Now let's start with Hawaii. It's the talk of the town today. 24 here today. Starting with last night, this 5.3 that came in at 8:09 last night, 13 kilometers deep near Kaloa. There's a volcano up there. So they're just moving around, and then the movement just spread out. So that's the first one, 5.3. Then 2.3 Mauna Loa, 3.0 Kaloa, 2.6 Kaloa, 2.3 Waikoloa, which is basically the same place, 2.3 Waikoloa Village, 2.7 Waikoloa Village, 2.2 Fern Acres, 2.7 Pahala, 2.8 Pahala, 2.8 Pahala, 1.7 Waikoloa Village, 2.2 Waikoloa Village, 2.8 near Mauna Loa, 1.8 Pahala, 1.8 that was over at Kilauea, and this one as it was at a minus 1.1 kilometer depth, so it's up in the crater. And a 1.8 Kaloa, 1.7 at Kilauea again, 1.9 Kaloa, 2.9 near Kilauea, 2.0 Pahala, 1.9 Fern Acres, 1.6 Waikoloa Village, and 2.4 Waikoloa Village is the last one, and it came in at 6:09 tonight. So that's still shaking up there. So in that area they've had 12 here today. So there is massive movement going on here. And the pressure is just building out, and it's just springing leaks up here. So we need to keep everyone in Hawaii in our prayers. Now let's move on over to Dominican Republic. We've got 8 here today. 3.0, 2.5, 1.8, 2.8, 2.7, 2.9, 2.7, and 2.2. So, showing movement. Now moving on up into Alaska. We've got 101 here today, so it's a lot more in the numbers. And they average between 50 and 100 a day, but we've been seeing under 100 for quite a while now. We were seeing 50 and around 50 or even under 50 for a while there, but now it's picked back up. Of those, let's see which ones are 2.5 magnitude or higher. We've got 9 like that. So we're going to start with this big one, this 5.3 near Kiska volcano that came in at 8:30 this morning. There's the little wave, so let's see if there was a tsunami created from that. Okay. An earthquake has occurred. A tsunami is not expected. So this was for Tibaki from Palmer, Alaska. Here's the this is for Hawaii. Northwest Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Emergency management in the state of Hawaii. Local tsunami information. No tsunami is expected. So this was the 5.3 earthquake on the Big Island that was downgraded. It was originally a 5.5, it's showing here, but they downgraded it to 5.3. So those are the tsunami warnings for today. So let's continue. 3.8 Chernabura Island. 2.6 Kodiak. 2.8 Chirikov Island. 2.5 Redoubt Volcano. 3.2 Anchorage. 2.7 Big Lake. 2.5 Kobuk, and 3.2 Arctic Village. So let's take a closer look now. Definitely seeing an uptick coming in this Cook Inlet. A lot more here today. And remember, volcanoes are peppered all the way down this edge and all the way down on these Aleutian Islands. And let's look at Kobuk now. This region is still active. It's got 22 here today. A lot of them is surface level, 0 depth. 2s and 1s, but most of them at surface level. So let's come on down to the lower 48. See what we can see. Okay, the first one is Oklahoma. 2.6 near Quinton at 5:40 this afternoon. Here's one in New Mexico, a 2.8 near Cimarron at 2:47 this morning. And now Utah has 3, a 4.0, 2.7, and 1.7, all at Fillmore. So that's pretty high when we're seeing that 4.0 there. Now, look, Yellowstone, we're seeing 1 at Yellowstone today, 2.7 near Lincoln, Montana at 12:21 this morning. So remember, the earthquake makers are not at work today, and that is obvious when we're looking in these areas because there's no blasting, and the blasting causes earthquakes. I'm convinced of it. So nothing reported in the Northwest Pacific area. So let's look at our real-time tremor map. In the last 3 hours, they found 1 hour of tremors. And they're all up here to the west of Mount St. Helens, or southwest. Mount St. Helens is right about up here, and it's northwest of Portland. So there is definitely movement. In the last 24 hours, this is what it looks like. There's a cluster near Medford, Oregon, and then this huge cluster to the northwest of Portland. And it's 7.8 hours of tremors. So that's the most I've seen in 24 hours since I've been doing tremors, and it hasn't been that long. The most I've seen is like 5 hours of tremors. So this is 7.8, almost 8 hours of tremors in the last 24 hours. So something is going on. Now, coming on down, let's look at Nevada next. 2.0 near Cold Springs at 10:38 last night. Here's a 1.1 near Yerington, 1.3 Hawthorne, 1.7 Austin, 1.6 Courant, 0.1 near Beatty, and a 0 near Pahrump. So pretty quiet, just a handful. Now let's look at the geysers next. 32 here today. So none of these are 2.5 magnitude or higher. They're all under that, but it's a very high number. And they're mainly under 1. Generally under 1. The largest one is this 2.4 near Cobb, looks like. And there's a 2.2 that's a bigger dot that just came in. Now let's move on across. Let's zoom in down here. Now Mono Lake is clear. Mammoth Lake is clear. So this is the Coso Junction area. And we're seeing an uptick down here. 12 here today, including this one over here near Searles Valley at 0.8. So let's see what's going on here. Most of these are under 1. The largest one is this 1.8, and they're pretty shallow, like 0.1 kilometer depth, 0.4, 0.4, 0.5. This one, here's a 0.4 at minus 0.1 kilometer depth. Here's one at 0 depth, so it means that the magma is moving up into the chamber of the mountain or the volcano. 1.6, that's the last one that came in at 12:57 this afternoon at a minus 0.4 kilometer depth. So stuff is happening there. Now let's come on down this San Andreas fault line. Here's a 1.4 Gilroy, 1.9 Hollister, 2.1 Tres Pinos, 2.9 Pinnacles, 2.3 Pinnacles. 2.9 is getting up there. Here's a 2.1, 12 kilometers north-northwest of Vandenberg Air Force Base. At 5:01 this afternoon, 0.8 kilometers deep. Wonder what they were doing. 2.1 Fraser Park. Now we're coming into Southern California. Baja is okay today. So we're showing 27 on the map today. We've got a cluster down here in the Salton Sea. 1.3, 1.2, and 2.2. And a cluster at Kauai again, and then they're just peppered around. So these are pretty small ones. Here's a 2.2 at Calipatria. That was in Salton Sea. 1.6 Baldwin Hills. So let's zoom out. Oh, look at this. What's going on over here? Here's this one just came in, a 5.1 near Claveria, Philippines at 6:33 tonight, 17 kilometers deep. That was in the ocean to the north of this island. And we have one that came in on land in Burma, 4.7 near Hakka, Burma at 6:39, 52 kilometers deep. So those both came in at the same time, or 6 minutes apart, basically. So let's make sure we got them. Got those two. Got Oklahoma. Got that one. Quinton, Oklahoma. We got Arctic Village. Got that one. 3.2. We got Nepal. We got Kobuk. I think that's a wrap. So I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. So I think time is very short, as we're seeing with these larger earthquakes and the more bizarre weather, and as the Arctic sea ice will be melting as the heat starts to come, we're going to see more and more cataclysms. We've had awful weather in the United States this week. Tornadoes, and people have died, and more flooding and snows and storms, and It's just crazy. It's April. It's mid-April. That shouldn't be happening over there. But we're in no man's land, and we can't go by how things used to be. Every day is a brand new day, and it's like living a lifetime every day. So I'm praying for everybody, especially for ones who have not made the decision to get on board with God and Jesus. I'm praying for all the lost souls. Time is so short. So I recommend everyone get your spiritual houses in order right now. Until next time, God bless you. Go in peace and good night.